Hey guys, it's Jack with the Teenage Techie, and you're watching my review of the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 is this year's update to the Nexus phone, which is Google's singular vision of what an Android phone should be. In the past, it seemed that there's always been at least one major flaw with every iteration of the Nexus. Last year, the Nexus 4's camera was not that great, and it didn't have LTE when LTE devices had been flooding the market for more than a year. Well, the Nexus 5 has LTE, and Google claims that the camera is much better than the Nexus 4's. But this is the company that claimed that the Galaxy Nexus's camera was fantastic, so we'll obviously have to verify that claim for ourselves and give the rest of the device a complete rundown as well. The design of the Nexus 5 is very good. It has a matte, soft touch back that lets the phone be very light and yet not feel cheap or slick and slimy like the Galaxy S4. Compared with the Nexus 4, which had a glass back, it's lighter, more sturdy, and feels better in the hand. It feels great in your hand not just because of its build quality, but also because of its size. It's very thin, and while it's certainly much larger than an iPhone due to its larger screen size, it's also not the least bit unwieldy like the Galaxy Note 3. Another quality element of the design is the buttons. They're made of ceramic, and they feel really nice when pressed. I do think that the power button is a little high on the device, but it's a small complaint, and I managed to turn the phone on and off just fine. Let's go back to the screen. It's a 4.95-inch 1080p LCD display. The display is very sharp, and while the colors aren't quite as vibrant as they are on AMOLED screens, they're still very good. The Nexus 5 has by far the best screen of any Nexus phone released to date. Even though the screen is one of the Nexus 5's greatest strengths, the camera is one of its biggest weaknesses. It's an 8-megapixel shooter with optical image stabilization. It looks good on paper, but it just doesn't perform in real life. Sometimes it was hard to get a shot in focus, and even then the general quality of the photos weren't great. Google's claiming that all of this can be fixed with a software update, and that it has nothing to do with hardware. I'm inclined to believe them, because the sensor in the Nexus 5 is based off that of its cousin, the LG G2, which took some pretty great photos. But as it stands now, the Nexus 5 is definitely not your best option if you're a photo junkie. One of the other biggest flaws of the Nexus 5 is the speakers. They're not very good. They're too soft, they're on the bottom of the phone, and only one of those grills is actually a speaker, the other's a mic. Battery life was pretty good on the Nexus 5. I was able to get through at least a day with moderate use. It's not quite as long lasting as the Galaxy Note 3, but as long as you're not watching YouTube videos all day long on your phone, you should do pretty well with the Nexus 5's battery. On the inside, the Nexus 5 is virtually identical to the G2. It has a 2.26 GHz Snapdragon 800 processor, 2 GB of RAM, and a Adreno 330 GPU, and 16 or 32 GB of internal storage. The Nexus 5, unlike its predecessor, also supports LTE. The G2 was already one of the fastest phones I've ever used, and the Nexus 5 has all the same hardware without LG's skin on top of Android to slow the phone down. Plus, Android 4.4 KitKat has been optimized to play nicely with lesser hardware than before. In other words, the Nexus 5 is blazingly fast. I never had any troubles with any lags, skips, or stutters. It's the quickest, smoothest Android phone I've ever used. The Nexus 5's hardware is great, but software is where the Nexus 5 is truly unique. It's the first device to ship with the newest version of Android, codenamed KitKat. As a whole, KitKat is an evolutionary upgrade to Jelly Bean. Most of the changes are small design changes, and not huge changes in functionality. For example, the blue accents that were once uniquely identifiable with stock Android are now gone, replaced with white accents. Also, the status and button bars are now transparent on the home screen and in the app drawer in Google Now. Google Now is located to the left of the first home screen, but it can still be accessed the old way, with a swipe up from the bottom of the screen. You can also now initiate a voice search from the home screen by simply saying, "OK Google," and as an Easter egg, you can also say, "OK Jarvis." Other small design changes include larger app icons present on the home screen and the app drawer, and the excision of the widgets section from the app drawer. You can now add widgets with a long press on the home screen. One of the changes in functionality with KitKat is Hangouts. Google has integrated their Hangouts messaging service with SMS, so the Hangouts app serves as the SMS app on the Nexus 5. In theory, the app works a lot like the iMessage app does on the iPhone, but the biggest difference between the two is that the conversations aren't integrated in the Hangouts app as they are on the iPhone. You have to manually switch between IMing and texting with the same contact. Another app that has received a substantial upgrade is the Phone app. The primary function of the Phone app is now search. You can search nearby businesses in addition to your contacts right from the Phone app. In fact, the new app is so centered on search that you have to access the dialer in your call history by hitting buttons on the bottom of the app. Caller ID has also been upgraded on the Nexus 5. In KitKat, when a business calls you, the Nexus 5 will do a quick image search and display a picture related to that business as the caller ID picture. It will also show the name of the business, not just the number. All in all, the Nexus 5 is a really great phone, but it may not be the best phone for you. If you really need a good picture-taking phone, the Nexus 5 is probably not for you because its camera is lacking in many aspects, as well as its speakers. The design might also not be quite as nice as those of the iPhone 5S and the HTC One, but you also have to remember that the Nexus 5 is only $350 off contract, and the iPhone costs about twice as much. If you need a stock Android phone, the Nexus 5 is the phone for you because it has better hardware and is cheaper than the Google Play editions of the Galaxy S4 and the HTC One. Anyway guys, I would really appreciate it if you could click on those like and subscribe buttons if you like this video. See you next time and thanks for watching.